In this video, we're going to discuss short circuit evaluation. Short circuit evaluation refers to the stopping or skipping of the evaluation of operands to a Boolean operation if the truth value can be determined without the value or result of those operands. This behavior is seen with the and or operators. So for example, let's consider the following two helper functions. The function f1 is simply going to print its name, f1, and then return true. The function f2 will print f2 and then return false. So we're going to pass these functions as operands to and or so that we can see the output of the print statements and know which of these functions was actually called. And if the output is missing from one of these functions, then we know that it wasn't called. So let's consider f1 or f2. The operands are evaluated from left to right. So when I run this, we see that f1 is printed, and we know that f1 returns true, which is sufficient for the OR operator to return true without having to evaluate f2. And because of short circuit evaluation, the function f2 is not called, and so we don't see f2 in the output. The OR operator has enough information after the call to f1 to return the result without calling the function f2. If we were to do the same thing but replace OR with AND, a single true from f1 is not sufficient for the AND operator to decide on the final value, and so f2 must be evaluated in this example. And so in the output, you see both f1 and f2 printed. Now, if we switch the order of the functions and consider OR again, this time false was returned from f2 and was not enough for the OR operator, and so f1 must be called in order to find the final result of this expression. And in the output, we see both f2 and f1 printed, followed by the result true. And if we repeat this with the AND operator, we see that the false value that was returned by f2 is of course sufficient for the AND operator to return false, and so it's not required to call f1, which it does not. Now, if you were to use variables as the operands to and or, then you should not have any of the side effects like we just saw here, where the output was actually dependent on the order in which the operands were passed to and or. If you have functions or expressions to be evaluated as part of an and or expression, then you'll want to pay attention to this, as it may result in functions not being called as you expect. Now, as a final example here, if you were to chain the and or, you see that neither f2 or f3 are called. And so if your code depended on some operation being performed by f2 and f3, you may not want to include them directly in an expression like this.